Hello everyone, you're joining me in the F16 over somewhere northern Caucasus, and we're starting to run low on fuel. We made a mistake during loadout and we only put on a center bag and we didn't realize it until just now. And scrolling through, you see center bag and wings are all reading 0. And we only have 3.3 left altogether. Now, ordinarily that wouldn't be a problem, except the weather is not great. We're having a look. Not only is it overcast with multiple layers of clouds, but we've got really thick fog down there. And in this tutorial, we'll be looking at how to get back. And the only thing that we have as navigation point is this point here, which is just nothing. It's not an air base or anything. It's just the first waypoint I put down. We didn't even need that waypoint. It was just so that there was one to begin with. So I'm going to have a quick look on the F10 map. And what we see is we're circling out over here. What we're going to plan to do is land at this base here, Galendek. And so I'm not going to say, oh, well, need to go this way then, because, well, we could do that. The purpose of this tutorial is how to navigate through IMC. And I wanted to do it so that you didn't have to set it up in the mission editor. You could jump into a plane on any server that either did or didn't have any waypoints. And so that's what we're going to do. And so first of all, we know that waypoint 1 is that one waypoint down there. So what I'm going to do is for a moment just pause the track IR about there. So we've got waypoint 1, but that's no factor. So let's change the steer point to steer point 2 or waypoint 2. And let's come back to the map, and the first thing we're going to do is change the default mode. To do that, I'm going to hold down the Alt key and press Y twice. And you see there, we change from the degrees, minutes and seconds to, I believe, what they call decimal degrees, minutes and seconds. Decimal minutes being up to 100 and not 60. Anyway, whatever they exactly call it otherwise. And Y4s, it's Alt-Y twice. And this is the system that the F16 and the F18 use. Excuse me. And so what I want to do is put 2 waypoints in, and the reason I want to put 2 in is one of them's obviously going to be the runway itself. It has to be because the visibility is so low. But in addition to that, I also want another waypoint that's going to be like my approach waypoint, and that's going to guide me in, and that's going to set me up for my height as well. And so let's start with our approach waypoint. We see here we've got the runway, and if I grab the ruler tool here, I can run the heading, run the heading along, and if I zoom in, I can see there it is 040 exactly. And so what I'm going to do is measure, if we come the other way, 220, I'm going to measure out from this threshold 3 miles. And I'm going to do it on that heading of 220. So I'm just holding down the right mouse button with the ruler to do this. And I'm going to measure out, and there's 4. Let's drop it to 3 miles. And the reason 3 miles is because 3 miles is 1,000 feet on a roughly 3-degree descent profile, which is a standard approach. And I'm going to right click there, and that lets go of the ruler. And what I'm interested in, without changing anything, is the coordinates of this point here, this end of the line, and that's going to give me my approach point. And so when I mouse over, I'm going to memorize this bit here. And what I've got is 44,31,874. Don't need to be too precise with the last digits, so to stop me having to keep look back and forward every time, I'm just going to say 44,31,86. So, and I've already forgotten, it was 44,31,86, that's it. So come to steer point, down, north, 44,34,86. And then it wants another digit, so I'm just going to put 5. Just put it in the middle, enter. And then I'm going to come down, press east, because I already know it's east, because we're in the Caucasus. And it's going to be 0375732. 0375732. 0375732. And then I'm just going to put a 5 in just to get that third digit after that point. You could be more precise. It's just one more digit to remember that my little brain can't cope with. And then the elevation, and we've already discussed a 3 to 1 degrees descent profile is 1,000 feet, but how high is the runway? Because it's 1,000 feet above the runway, we want that descent profile. Well, moving the mouse over the runway, we can see up here when we do so that it's 72 feet. So what I'm going to do is pop in an elevation profile of 1072 just to try and keep me with that 3-degree profile. Again, the visibility is so bad that we want to give ourselves the best shot possible. So I'm going to press enter there. And with that done, I know that I'm a little ways away now from where I'm wanting to be. And with fuel ticking out, what I'm going to do before I continue with the rest of this is pop a manual heading in. And I want to head vaguely this way. So I'm going to say, judging at that point where I want to be somewhere over here, which is going to be something like, let's try south 180,190. Let's go for a heading 190. Again, this doesn't need to be too precise. They often say as a pilot that to get a decision 90% right 90% of the time is a lot better than no decision at all. And that's absolutely true, all right? Obviously, if you realize you've done something wrong in that 10% of the time, you then correct it as soon as you realize, yeah? But inaction is far worse than getting it mostly right most of the time. So with that said, we're continuing the turn here. Let's get altitude hold. That was correct. Let's put ourselves onto heading select now. And it's going to start chasing that down. We're now going to come up here and I'm going to pop that into steering mode 3, steer point 3, sorry. And with that, we're going to put the latitude and longitude of the runway itself. So once again, I'm in Caucasus. I know it begins with north, no question about it. And now I'm going to put in the coordinates of this threshold. There is no landing, the aiming point for the landing on this one. And even if there were, I wouldn't use it because this is quite a short runway. So I'm going to pop the piano keys in. I actually think where that ruler ends is a good point. So again, I'm looking up here and I can see 44,34,030. This time I am going to be precise with the last digit because we're dealing with landing on the runway, not just an arbitrary point 10 miles away. So 44,34,030. 44,34,030. That's in. Going to enter that and scroll down. I already know it's going to be east and I already know the first digit's going to be 0. So let's get those two out the way and let's try and memorize the rest. We've got 3800240. Nice and easy. So 3800240. 3800240. Let me just check that. 3800240. Yeah, altitude we see there 72 feet. So I'm going to come down to the elevation and pop that in. So right now, if I go back to steer point 2 and steer point 3, you see these are both in. Steer point 2, you see on the elevation there is 1,000 feet above steer point 3. And, excuse me, I'm now going to pop track IR back on for a sec. And when we zoom in here, you can see waypoint 2 and waypoint 3 fairly close together at this particular zoom. And that's because they are, right? They're only 3 miles apart. So what I'm going to do now, just to lighten the workload for me, is come back to steer point 2, which is our initial point. And I'm going to come over here to the roll autopilot and just put it into steering mode. And it's going to fly us towards whichever the waypoint is, in this case, waypoint 2. I've deliberately chosen a airfield without an ILS or a TACAN or any other radio beacon, because that's that would obviously be a different type of approach, and the ILS, especially in this aircraft in this weather, would obviously be a big advantage. It's just important to note that if, let's for example say that this airport was already in our flight computer's destination, perhaps there was a predefined mission and this airfield here was our end destination, it wouldn't have the piano keys or the threshold as the end destination. It would actually have the middle of the runway as the end destination, literally the middle halfway down. Now, in the visibility as bad as it is, that's not what you'd want. Normally it wouldn't matter, right? In fact, the middle is best. The middle of the airport helps you get there and decide which end the best. But because the visibility is so bad in this case, we want to give ourselves the point where we actually want the wheels to touch the ground. So that's why we've put this position in and not this position where this icon is, which that is the middle of the runway. That's the position you would have if you just had a waypoint that said in the editor, go to there. You can see now the aircraft is heading, I don't want to mess up my ruler, but the aircraft is heading towards this point here on autopilot. I'm just going to verify the coordinates as we come in, because something don't feel quite right. So we've got north, and it's this one we should be coming to, 443186. There, you see that's off. 443186. You can see how it matters. So let's update that. North 443186.5. North 4431.865. Let's bang that in. There's the correction. Now that's looking more like it. Let's just verify the rest is this correct. 3757.325. 3757.325. That's close enough. And let's double check this end. We've got north 4434.031. So let's quickly just switch up. 4434.031. That's close enough. And we've got 380023. Yeah? 380023. Or 24. 380024. Right, that's great. Okay, I'm happy with that. So let's zoom out. At this point, we're right close, and we know, yes, there are hills in the area, but over that way, so that way that I'm looking is over the sea. We've got that approach point there, which is 1,000 feet up on a 3-degree slope. We know that's a typical approach, and so we're not gonna bother with or get upset over the fact that we can't see if there are any hills. We know on a standard 3-degree approach on that runway there are no hills. So with that, I'm going to come back to heading select mode. Let's have a look at the course line. We could fill that in 220. So we know again the reciprocal 040. And at this point, let's descend. Going to get rid of roll hold now. Just put attitude hold. Again, we've got waypoint 2 selected. Going to come off there now. Let's get the minimums in. So I'm going to press allow. 500 feet is way too high. We're not going to see the ground at that point. I'm going to pop it in at something like 35 feet. Here we are going into the clouds, and then we've got fog beneath that. I'm keeping an eye here on the radio altimeter. I'm going to set the floor, just going to pop something in like 800. Why 800? Because if you remember, I set my final fix there at 1072. I want to know that if I bust through this floor, I want to know about it right away, because ideally I don't want to hear the first alarm until after we've passed that fix. So we're there at 3,000 feet radio, 2,500. And there you can see that the DCS needs to, Eagle Dynamics needs to get on with this fog situation. You see, we can't see the sea at all because of fog, but if we look up, it's clear as day upwards into the clouds, and they obviously need to get this fog sorted so it's both up and down. But as long as we can't see below us, the example will work just great, because we can't we won't be able to see the runway. I've tried it. Let's just zoom out a little bit on that display while we get this turn done, and now we're going to head, just tighten it a little bit. And there we have it. The great thing about the F16 is you have a visual representation on the heads-up display of where the waypoint is. Now you can do that in the F18 as well, except you need to designate it as a target. You don't need to do that in the F16, which is kind of ideal, because although you don't mean it any harm, it seems kind of weird designating your own home base as a target all the time, especially when you've been on a bombing mission or something and you've just been doing that over the enemy. So I'm going to descend. I'm looking at my radio altimeter here as well as my pressure, and they're pretty close. Probably a slight discrepancy because we're flying over water. I didn't change the pressure. I'm now going to zoom in as far as I can. Now I can see I'm more or less in line. There is that 7 degree or so discrepancy there, what looks like. So I'm just going to knock the 7 degrees off the standard 40 degrees that you have on a magnetic variation. We're at about 1,000 feet there. I'm going to pop the air brakes on. Let's slow down. You see there, we're just under 2 miles. I should have slowed down a bit earlier, I think. Carried away. Got the air brakes out. Let's wiggle, and let's wiggle again. Right, I'm happy with that. Let's dump the gear. Coming right up to the waypoint. We've flown over it. Now we switch to the final approach and we tip down 3 degrees because that's what we've got set. And there we see the runway threshold, which is about 3 degrees. That dotted line there is 2.5 degrees. Looks like we're about right on. We're in line. And we're descending now. I'm keeping my eye on the radio altimeter on the right, coming in a little fast, so I'm just going to ease that off. 370. At this point, if it starts deviating, I'm not going to chase after it too wild, because look at the height. I'm really close to the ground. 200 feet. 180. 130. 50. Whoa. See how that rose up to the ground? That's because it was... whoops. That's because the runway was on a little hill. That last bit came really quick, didn't it? And I had to flare. Ballooned it a bit, but saved it. And there you have it. Look at that visibility, next to nothing. Again, you look into the sky and it's clear as anything, but I think you saw by how quick that runway come up at us then. It was a bit of a surprise to me. In fact, let's stop it there. We've completed that. Let's just see what happened there. So the runway, as we've said before, is 72 feet up, but watch as I move my mouse back from the runway. 72 feet. 62, 58, 57, 51. You see it counting back. So as we were coming here, it was like, oh yeah, I've still got 100 feet or whatever it was. But look how quickly the ground was coming up at me just because I was flying into rising terrain. So I pulled back at the stick, panicking. Saw the runway then right there, almost crashed into it. But thankfully, had just enough speed, height and reaction time to save it. And so that's it. That's the end of the video. Just remember, it's this tool here for the ruler. And yeah, you right click. So you go around on the map to where you want to go. Let's just pick a different runway and do this again. Let's say this one. You click on that tool. Let's find the runway heading first of all. So that's how we get it exact 296 degrees. All right, you might want to knock 7 degrees off for the magnetic variation. So it might be 289 that you put into your aircraft's heading bug, right? Just so it matches up with this. So 296, but we want the reciprocal. In this case, 116 degrees, because we want to come 3 miles off the end. You might want to come 6 miles off the end and give yourself 2,000 feet. I find 3 miles is enough. This time, we've got a much longer runway, so I might not come right from the piano keys, because it doesn't leave myself much wiggle room if I come in a little early. Here, this is ideally the point at which you're aiming to land, right? Ordinarily, you'd be coming over that at 50 feet. And you'd be landed, this would be the latest point which you'd land, but these thicker bars are really the aiming point. So let's grab that and let's wind back once again. Again, I right clicked on there and I'm using my left mouse to move like that and my scroll wheel there like normal. And I'm tracking back on that heading 116 and there's 3 miles. Let's get 116. There we go. That's close enough. And so this would be my first waypoint, right? You might call it your final approach fix for those of you that are into flying in the FMCs on the airlines and all that. So with your mouse there, again, you can't move your mouse. As soon as you move your mouse, you see these numbers change. So with your mouse there, you've got north 42, 49, 657, 65. Or even .66 if you were rounding up. But again, it doesn't need to be too precise. If you look at my mouse movement in there, you see how the numbers are changing. but anywhere in there doesn't really matter. Okay, it can't be over here, that's too far off. But anywhere within the nearest, you know, that area, and you look at the coordinate system, it can go up or down 2 or 3 digits. Add yourself, let's have a look at the height, 44 feet. So we want to be around 1044 at that point. And that gives yourself that nice 3-degree descent profile that we saw before. And then the next waypoint again is this one. And so again, there you have it. Try not to, when you're doing this, just use the left mouse button and the mouse wheel. Because as soon as you right click, you're going to lose that ruler. And not that it's the end of the world. It just means you've, all right, damn it, I've got to drag it out again, right? But you don't want to be doing that too many times. It just gets frustrating. So put it there, right click again and leave it there. And there you have it. So that's the end of the tutorial. I hope you found it useful. The F16, the F18 and the Harrier can all make use of these very, very precise waypoints, and you can land in almost zero visibility. I would say the Mirage as well, but recently they downgraded the accuracy of the Mirage's INS. Don't know if anybody's noticed that, but they've got rid of the last decimal point, which means that, let's see how accurate the Mirage is. Let's draw a ruler. So the last decimal point I'm talking about, they have these two numbers, these two. They did then have 2 more, but now they only have 1. So if we add 1 number, we go from there, 0, hang on, let's start 47.0, right, 2.1. And as you can see, that much of an area is just too big to have to be random, let's say. It's when you're dealing with landing on a runway, that's just too big in zero visibility. However, the Mirage does have the ILS facility together with synthetic runway vision. So providing the runway does have ILS facility, like Cobleti here, and I say it's got ILS, and then I go, oh yeah, there we go, runway 7, 11.50. You can land using that, but you can't just put in, like we did, a random runway and just get the coordinates. Anyway, so that really is the end. All right, take care, bye-bye.